alone in the wilderness. Out here is a wilderness, you feel me? And we need Christ to conquer the wilderness. We can't do it on our own. We can't do it on our own. We need Christ, you feel me? And Christ spent 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness alone. The devil tempted him, you feel me? Just like how out here the devil will tempt us in with the system, you feel me? Because the devil is the ruler of the system. The system is his. So the devil will tempt us. We'll be alone. We'll feel alone and he'll tempt us in the wilderness. You feel me? Like how he tempted Christ. You feel me? The devil tempted Christ in the wilderness. Offered him this, offered him that. He knew Christ was hungry one time. In the wilderness, he knew Christ was hungry. So he said, if you're hungry, turn these stones into bread and eat. Christ told him, man shall not live by bread alone, but by the word of God. You feel me? So by that, we should know, like Christ was basically, he was fasting. He was fasting out in the wilderness. So when we going through rough situations, it's good to fast. So we should know fasting, like ain't eating nothing. It strengthens you too. Because we much Christ is the perfect example how to live, you know. If you follow Christ the way Christ lived, he's the perfect example of how we should live. And when he was going through those rough times, he was fasting, basically. He wasn't eating. You feel me? And when you fast, it gives you discipline. It disciplines you. So by fasting, you will develop discipline in your life. So the devil tempted him with telling him, turn these, since you're the son of God, turn these stones into bread. He said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by the word of God. You feel me? The hell with food. You feel me? The hell with food. And the devil offered him the government. He offered him the system. Now, some people may feel the system ain't the devil's own. The system is not the devil's own. When the devil tempted Christ in the wilderness, if the system and the government was not his, how did he have the authority or the power to offer Christ these things? Ask yourself that. How can a man offer you something without it being his? He offered Christ the wall, the system, the governments. He offered Christ these things, but Christ refused it. Christ refused the system. So by that we should know the system is not good for us. You feel me? The system is not good for us. Because, like I said, Christ is the perfect example of how to live, how we should live. Yes, time has changed and a lot of things may be hard to get, so we might have to go out in the system and struggle in the system or whatever to achieve and gain certain things. But at the same time, don't set our heart upon the system. You feel me? Because the system is not your friend, basically. You feel me? It's not for you. So that's why I know the system is the devil's, because it was in his hands to afford Christ. If it wasn't his, how can he offer it to Christ? The governments and all of this. But like I said, Christ refused it. You know. So the system is like a wilderness in itself. Just like how the devil tempted Christ in the wilderness. We have to restrain and withstand the powers of the system, the temptation of the world, the temptation of the system. We have to withstand these things like Christ did. Whenever you feel alone, whenever one feel alone in the wilderness, look unto Christ for inspiration. Look unto Christ for inspiration. So one don't have to feel alone. Because whenever you feel alone, look unto Christ. He will be your strength and guidance. You feel me? Because whatever Christ did in those times, we did it. Whatever Christ conquered in those times, we conquered too. So we don't have to feel alone. And whenever we feel alone, just do the same things that Christ did in the wilderness. He fasted. He fasted. And he withstand temptation. Like, you know, he withstand the temptation of the devil. Because whenever you feeling low, the devil like to make you do certain things to make you feel better. But we should always know, whenever we feeling sad or depressed, that's the closest we get to the Father. You feel me? That's the closest we get to God. Whenever we feel sad or depressed, we are real close to the Father, to God. So whenever we feel that way, we should ask God for things. You feel me? We should talk to God, because the Father will never refuse a contrite spirit. And contrite is like when you're going through the, you know, you're sad, like a sad spirit. You know, he will never refuse it. So whenever you're feeling depressed or sad or sorrowful, always know God is closer than you think. He's right there. So we must withstand the temptation of life, because it's a wilderness out here. And when we feel alone in the wilderness, we have to look unto Christ, because he conquered the wilderness. You feel me? He conquered. And the system, it tempts us. It makes us feel alone. Everybody else have this, everybody else have that. But how did they get it? How did they get it? Remember, the devil offered Christ, but Christ refused the system. So when we see people flourishing in the system, You don't know how they get it. So don't watch. We should not watch how people get things. Don't watch how people get things because you don't know how they come across it. Just focus on you and strive for the betterness of life other than the system. And like I say, if you have to do things in the system and gain certain things of the system because you have to go out and work to provide for your family or for yourself or whatever, set not your heart on the system or the things of the system or the things of the world. You feel me? Because we live in a modernized time, so we might need to use certain things, but don't put your heart upon it. Don't put your soul upon it. You feel me? You know, never feel alone. Christ is always there.